States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I have the roll call?
Councilmember Bach?
Here.
Councilmember Skidmore?
Here.
Councilmember Williams?
Present.
Councilmember Valenzuela?
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny?
Here.
Mayor Thornton?
Here. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there are no requests for any items to be removed, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is council staff reports and announcements. I have just a couple of quick things that I'm going to share with the council this evening. First of all, my next Mayor's Town Hall will be Wednesday, May 2nd at 6:30, and I conduct my town halls at the Public Works Conference Room. So everybody's invited, and I hope to see you all there. I just want to remind everybody that the construction on the 4th and Pacific Roundabout is going to start on May 7th. It's been a long time coming, but starting May 7th, we'll actually see the contractors move in and the project will be underway. Again, as the city learns more about the phasing of that project and the impacts to the traffic, we will post that on the website and get that pushed out as frequently as we can and try to keep everybody as surprised the best we can as well. But again, it's going to start on May 7th. I just want to bring to the council's attention that over the next couple months, we do have a very aggressive schedule for our meetings and some work sessions. So a lot of things coming up. The Planning Commission has been very busy working on things like cottage housing and mixed use. So it'll be coming forward to the City Council for action. We also have work sessions scheduled for area-specific system development charges, latecomers agreements, and it's going to just be busy for the next couple months, and I appreciate everybody's efforts and hard work on that. With that being said, Councilmember Valenzuela here a couple months ago has indicated that he would like to move on and do other things with his time rather than just be here at council meetings every 2 weeks and all the things that he does in between council meetings. But he's been very gracious to stick with us here as we get through this next couple months in this this busy schedule that we have. So I want to thank you, Councilmember Valenzuela, for that, and I really, really appreciate it. Thanks. So hang in there. We'll get you out of here soon. So that's all I have this evening. Next are council comments. Councilmember Paul.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Last Thursday, I attended the Fireworks Stakeholders Group meeting in Vancouver. It was an interesting meeting. There were about 25 people in attendance at that meeting. It was chaired by Councilmember Volt and Councilmember Olson. There were representatives from Clark County Fire Marshal's office, and the fireworks manufacturers and retailers were also present, as well as representatives from HOAs in the unincorporated areas of the county. And in the cities of LaCentre, Ridgefield, Jackholt, and Washougal were also present at that meeting. A little bit of a background, the city of Vancouver banned fireworks, which went into effect last year in 2017. But all the other communities made no changes, and so what we have is a situation where Vancouver does not allow any sale or discharge of fireworks. And all the other communities, including the county, which is split into two sections for fireworks reasons, have all got different regulations. For example, the sales of fireworks are allowed for anywhere from 6 to 13 days, depending on the community, and discharge is allowed between 2 and 9 days, depending on the locale. Clark County has some problems with it's being split into two zones. 219th Street is the horizontal divider, and the codes are much stricter on the southern part of that line than on the northern part of that line. The county would like to see the cities and both sections of the county follow a uniform set of rules. They want to see the number of sales days to be reduced somewhat, and the discharge days as well. They also eventually would like to see everyone go to a safe and sane type of firework and to eliminate the big boomers. As you might imagine, there was considerable disagreement in that meeting. I don't think I have to explain that, but there was a lot of disagreement there. But I do have to say that there was one point where everyone was unanimous on, and that was not to hurt the charities in the fireworks booths that are around the county and in the cities. So that much was one point that everyone was in agreement with. Still talking, no major decisions other than to not do anything negative anything that would hurt the charities. And we have no immediate meetings scheduled. There will be something fairly soon, and I will be attending those meetings, and as I have more information, I will report back to you on what develops. In the meantime, if you've got comments, please email me. I'd like to know what's on your minds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug, what about your AWC meeting? Didn't you attend a
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
AWC meeting? Didn't you attend the local?
Yes.
What did you get out of that?
I'll be glad to mention that to you as well. I attended an AWC meeting in Kalama last night, and the meeting was comprised of representatives from what they call the small cities. Quite interesting meeting. It was the first meeting for me of that type to attend, and there were mayors of small cities there, as well as council members, and there was one city attorney present at the meeting. And we all have a lot in common. We have the same, got the budgetary issues, as you might imagine. We also have growth issues. We also have situations where perhaps some of the more, the residents with longevity are not real comfortable with some of the growth that's going on. That we've all shared those feelings as well. But all in all, a good meeting, and the senator is very well respected out there among everyone. So that was very nice to hear and to learn. Thanks. That's it.
You might want to mention the prize you got last night as well, and save the city some big bucks.
I'm not a lucky person by nature. That's why I don't go to casinos and I don't go to card rooms, because I learned many years ago that the money goes out faster than it comes in, with me anyway. But last night, though, they had a drawing, and so I got my little ticket and the stub, and the number was really good. It had 7 numbers on it, and out of the numbers I had a full house, so I figured it's got to be a good sign. And so I won the grand prize, and that was a free registration at the AWC conference in Yakima this next summer.
Well, good deal. No, you were planning on going anyway, so that worked out really
But
well.
it saves the city $145 right now.
There you go. Love it. Well, thank you for that, Councilmember Wolf. Good report. Councilmember Stimmel?
No comments tonight.
Councilmember Williams?
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Valenzuela?
Just for points of interest, the Planning Commission has been tasked with redoing the lighting codes, all the lights in the neighborhoods. There was a grant that was issued that they're going to do some upgrading in the existing neighborhoods. And then we had a presentation from one of the companies that was very informative. A lot of technical stuff, a lot of data stuff. But hopefully that information will get back to staff as they start to draft the new lighting rules, so that we can come into the next generation of lighting. Pretty much everybody's going to LED lighting. There were some really nice fixtures that were available. Obviously, there's got to be consistency in the lighting. We don't want to get in a situation where there's going to be a lot of different kinds of poles and a lot of different kinds of lights. It's too difficult to maintain. So there'll have to be some congruity. But as we go forward, we'd like to also update the technology. So it was a technology-based presentation, and it was very informative. I learned a whole lot about. Now I feel illuminated. And then I had a few questions on the budget tonight, and I reviewed those with the mayor. Because we're in transition here, and all the questions were answered. So everything looks like it's copacetic.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Cerveny?
I don't have anything particular, but I would like to encourage everybody to just slow down,
watch out for the kids. It's that time of year where they're going to be everywhere.
Thank you. I would like to just take a moment to recognize a guest that we have here this evening. We have the Community Development Director from Ridgefield here, Mr. Jeff Knighton. So thank you for attending our meeting tonight. Great to see you. And we also have our, Janice Corbin is here as well. She is our contract human resource person. So thank you for being here, Janice. Next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. If anybody would like to address the council, if you'd please step up to the podium and give us your name and address. And if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Nelda Perryman, 824 East Pioneer Loop. Mayor, council, and citizens. I was contacted the other day by a Meals on Wheels representative and asked to produce a proof that the community center has been inspected by a fire marshal. We looked that place up and down and could find no proof that it had been recently inspected. It is my understanding that the conclusion, or that this decision was made by the council and the mayor not to have any of the businesses in the center inspected by a fire marshal. Because the community center is owned by the city and used by not only Meals on Wheels people, but by many others in our community, my question is, what would happen to the city's liability if, in fact, a fire did break out and some of our senior citizens were, in fact, hurt? If the mayor can spend over $20,000 to hire a private investigator to try to find cause to fire our finance director, shouldn't he at least find the amount of money to protect our senior citizens? How am I supposed to talk to this person tomorrow at Meals on Wheels and tell him, I'm sorry, we're not going to do it. We're not going to spend the money to save possibly our senior citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sharon Brandstetter. I live at 1015 Northwest Pacific Highway. On Saturday, the 14th, I was walking my dog, my little one, and I noticed that a gentleman was coming up on Pacific Highway and turned on West D Street Avenue. And this dog was not on a leash, and I think all of you guys probably have dogs, even maybe two. And I've never seen, I've been here for 21 years, and I've never seen a dog without a leash. Then I understand now that there's no law to have a leash on. You have to have control of your dog. But anyway, this gentleman was walking and this dog was beside him. It was a big black, and I thought it was a lab, but everybody says labs aren't aggressive. So anyway, the dog mauled my dog. And so I ran home, and I told my son, I says, he's been mauled, and so we ran to the vet. The vet sent us to the animal hospital by the mall, and then they sent us over to Dove Lewis Hospital in downtown Portland. And he has surgery that night. He has staples on both sides of his back. His kidneys were out, and they were floppy, and they had to put those back in. His intestines were out. So what I'm asking is, can we have this law changed, that everyone should have a leash? I mean, I can't believe how many people have dogs, and I think it's wonderful. But this dog is dangerous. I also took all the expenses that accumulated, took them down to the police department and asked that they could, look out for this dog. I don't know who the owner is. There was people across the street that witnessed it. No one came out to say, "Oh, are you okay?" I was bleeding because my dog bit me because I tried to pick him up, and he was bleeding pretty bad, so was I. But anyway, I understand that there's no law for leashes. Is there any way that you can change this?
The council can definitely take that into, I think with your story, we'll definitely be talking more about that for sure. And I'm so sorry for your loss. That's a horrible story.
Yeah. Well, he's alive.
But I mean, it's still a huge, believe me, we have
I mean,
small
well, we
dogs
should've
too,
put
and
him
it's
down,
very bad.
but, we didn't. I mean,
Okay,
but, okay, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Telling us.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Dennis Nuttbach, 1509 Northwest 339th Street. And as Councilman Valenzuela mentioned, the Planning Commission started an effort to look at our engineering standards, municipal code for lighting. In doing that, we've gained a lot of information here really quickly. And I would like to make a couple comments on the LED replacement program that you're being asked to undertake this evening. I want to emphasize these comments are my personal comments. They're not a consensus for the Planning Commission, but it's based upon a lot of research we've been doing. The city, as you'll see, the city has, I think, about 86 Acorn lights in the residential areas. And we're finding that those Acorn lights are not very environmental friendly. Because of their nature, they put a lot of light upwards, which leads to night or sky glow. And they also distribute a lot of light around the periphery that causes glare in the eyes and can impact safety. The LED replacement program has an opportunity, I believe, to mitigate those issues if we're picking the right replacement bulb. The bulb that has, as I understand it from Mr. Sarvis's note, the bulb that's been picked for the Acorn replacement does have some shielding, which should mitigate some of those issues. But my concern is, without specific photometric data, you don't know how that bulb is going to perform. So I would hope the city staff has used photometric data to pick that bulb specifically that's going to address some of those issues, particularly uplight and glare. The other issue I have with the bulb being picked is it's a what's called a Type 5 pattern. There are several different types of patterns that a bulb can project on the ground. Type 5 is a symmetric pattern that is round or square in nature. And it's putting equal amounts of light on the street side as it is on the sidewalk or house side. And so the concern is that bulb could lead to trespass issues on residences. And it's interesting that our engineering standards specify that the Acorn light should be a Type 3 pattern, which is more of an elongate pattern, puts the majority of the light on the street side, minimizing the light on the sidewalk side. So I'm curious on why we have picked a Type 5 bulb when our engineering standards specifically require a Type 3 bulb. I fully support the LED replacement program. I think it's the right thing to do. But I think it also provides us an opportunity to address some of the issues we have with our Acorn lights if the right kind of bulb is picked. It's picked based upon specific photometric data. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis.
The staff, I know, I visited with Sarvis today as well, Director Sarvis today as well, and there is some data available. The spec sheets are available, and we probably need to have a little work session on the lighting to make sure that we understand everything that we're getting into, especially with the new code coming up. I don't know when that's coming forward, but I know Naomi was going to start doing some work on that. So
I sat
hopefully,
in a meeting on Friday with the lighting with a manufacturer's representative, and Joe was in that meeting, and two of the Planning Commission members were there. And based on what I saw and heard in that meeting and what I'm hearing tonight, I think we need to defer this so we can continue talking about it a little bit more.
Okay, very good.
Joe Woodage, 34102 Northeast 14th Avenue. Mayor, council members. citizens. This Suzanne Levis thing just will not go away. We're still spending thousands of dollars monthly to deal with it, and I'm afraid there are going to be many thousands spent before this thing is through. One of the council members, I'll try to use no gender, no name, because it's not my goal, made a startling accusation of Suzanne Levis visiting Jim Irish on his deathbed and forcing him to sign a favorable contract. This was an out-and-out lie. Now, whoever that council member is going to be involved in the decision regarding Suzanne Levis. I think that he should not be voting on any measure that relates to her. There were 3 people involved in this party. I've spoken on a first name basis to all 3 of them to verify that the information the citizen brought forward was correct. That's most of my thunder went away because of earlier statements in the meeting. The sign ordinance, my apologies to the members of the planning committee that are here tonight, but it's still a repressive, abusive ordinance. At least 2 of the council members listening to your discussion last meeting, at least 2 of you recognize the fact that this was an oppressive measure to small businesses. And in the end, you voted all in lockstep, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Democracy is a contentious thing. Let's say that there are 1,000 people in town, 510 of them are for one thing, 490 are for the other thing. There should be council members representing each group. The group who didn't like this heard no vote. And again, I heard you council members and realized that there was some recognition that there were some things in there that should be changed. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that'll conclude citizen public comment. Next on the agenda, we do have one staff report this evening. Mr. Paul Lewis is here this evening to present the first quarter financial results for the city of La Center. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and citizens. So I've got in your packets a more complete staff report with a full first quarter financial information. What I have for you tonight is a presentation. I've got about 12 slides. I wanted to hit on some of the highlights for the first quarter, and happy to entertain any questions you have as we go. I think in terms of prefatory comments, the first quarter is usually something that's very hard to make any kind of conclusions about where we're going to end the year. There's a bunch of anomalies that happen in the first quarter, and it's really too early to make any conclusions about trends for the year. But despite that, I'll point out a couple of things that happened during the first quarter and that we'll be tracking as we go through the year. So first up, in this slide, I've got a lot of numbers on here, but this is the encapsulation of all the general fund revenues. We oriented to this chart. Down the left-hand side are all the revenue sources, and across the top, the first 3 columns are the first quarter 2018 revenues, the 2018 budget, and then the percentage that the first quarter is of the total budget. So we're 25% through the year, so we're looking at roughly 25% of the revenue total as our target. The next 3 columns are the same information for 2017, and then the last 2 columns compare 2018 to 2017 for the first quarter. So just quickly hitting on property taxes. Property taxes are paid twice a year, and they usually come into the city in May and November. And so the first quarter we have very little property tax revenue. You can see this year $34,000, a little over $34,000 compared to last year. It was $10 less than last year in the first quarter, so right on spot. Just under 8% of the total for the year. That'll pick up as we go through the first half of the year, and then again in November we'll get the second large payment. Second line is utility taxes. As you recall, this is really a new line item for the city. You implemented utility taxes at the end of last year, and some of them are being phased in, so they won't be fully implemented until the second quarter of this year. You can see $37,000 total received in the first quarter, 12% of the total budget of $290,000, and then very little from last year for the full year, and none in the first quarter. Sales tax, somewhat of a bright spot for the first quarter, even though it's down from last year. I'll show you a chart in a minute that suggests that it's running a little bit better than we had expected. You can see the 34% of the total budget in the first quarter, much higher than the 25% that you would expect. And then the major source of revenue for the city, roughly 80% of the revenue comes from from taxes. 50% of the revenue comes from gambling tax. And you can see $381,000 in the first quarter of this year compared to a budget of $1,572,000, or roughly 24% of the budget. That compares to last year, $657,000, $658,000 roughly. And so $276,000 less. I'll get into some of the reasons for that in a minute in terms of the taxpayer agreement that we approved in January. Under that agreement, the new estimate, you'll see a footnote down at the bottom, $1,329,000 is now what we're expecting the card room taxes to come in at. And we're really right on plan so far this year to that estimate. And I'll share with you some additional information in a minute. So that's roughly 80% of your total revenue. Hitting on a couple of the other things, charges for goods and services. This is where we get a lot of the development activity revenue, permit activity revenue. You can see we're at 33% of the full year, coming in strong in the first quarter of the year in terms of development permits. Less than last year, but last year, if you recall, there was a $48,000 deposit for a new subdivision. So that skews the 2017 numbers. If you take that out, we're actually double where we were last year in the development permit side. And again, I'll have some slides on that in a minute. A couple of unique things to point out under miscellaneous revenue. There's $111,000 you'll see there. $100,000 of that is the donation from the Cowlitz tribe that they made restricted to police services, to be used for police services. That was part of the transaction where they acquired right-of-way from the city. The transaction was approved at the end of last year, but the money's come in the first quarter. And then lastly, the transfers down at the bottom. If you recall in your budget, you budgeted $200,000 to begin repayment of the general fund loan to the sewer fund for the wastewater treatment plant. That's the first payment. And $200,000 was the total budget. We made that payment in the first quarter of the year. So all told, $974,000 came in the first quarter. That compares to just roughly the same amount last year in the first quarter. But obviously in this first quarter in 2018, we have those two unique revenue sources, and all told, we're a little over $200,000 less on an adjusted basis, and the bulk of that's attributed to the card room taxes. So quickly go through a little bit more on the card room gambling tax revenue. This shows you the first quarter revenue going back to 2014 through 2018. So just to highlight, if you remember, we've had a lot of charts on this over the last several months. 2016 was really a banner year, and actually the first quarter of 2017 was a strong year as well. You can see the first quarter of 2018 at $381,000. Actually, $37,000 of that was a late payment from December, so the true revenue for the first quarter of 2018 for comparative purposes is roughly $344,000. You can see how that compares to the budget, the first quarter estimate, using the new estimates at just under $352,000. So we're really pretty close to exactly where we thought we'd be at the end of the first quarter under the revised agreement. And then in that other bar there, show you what the first quarter tax revenue would have been if the tax rate had been 10%. So you can see it's about $120,000 less than it would have been under a 10% tax rate. And then again, that's pretty much exactly what we had expected it to be. Just to quickly highlight a couple of the elements of the taxpayer agreement. Again, you approved this back in January. In terms of estimating the impact, the taxpayer agreement implemented a sliding scale tax rate, if you recall. Tax rate starts at 5% and actually goes up to 12.5%, depending on the monthly revenue at the card rooms. The average monthly revenue from last year, the May to December time period, was $850,000. That's the amount that we used for our estimates for 2018. If you apply that amount on a monthly basis, the effective tax rate for the card rooms is 6.8%. So they can compare that to a flat rate of 10%. We also, in that agreement, provided for a 5% rate beginning for 3 months from April, May, and June for a 5% tax rate up to $800,000 in monthly gross revenue. And then the sliding scale takes effect after 800,000 as it's currently written. That drops the overall year effective tax rate to 6.5%. So it's roughly a 32-35% reduction in the tax for the card rooms. That translates into about $360,000 for the full year. And the tax rate would be 10%. Under the agreement, the tax rate will revert to 10% in 2019 unless there's another agreement entered into. So quickly on how the estimates were developed. Again, 2016 and 2017 surplus totaled $1.2 million. So this was your general fund surplus. A lot of that was attributed to better than expected performance by the card rooms. The adopted budget had a planned deficit of $390,000. Again, the budget that you adopted had a revenue estimate for the gambling tax of $1,572,000. Under the revised agreement, the revised revenue estimate of $1,329,000, that increases that deficit by $243,000 to a total of $633,000. You have reserves of $6.8 million available in both your general fund and your reserve fund. Your policy target is 1.25 times your annual expenses, or $4.6 million. So you can see you've got roughly $2.2 million in additional reserves that are available to cover that $600,000 deficit. Again, the use of reserves was proposed. The additional reduction in taxes was not anticipated to cause a reduction in services in 2018. And this is the last slide I've got on the card room taxes. This is a slide that shows the gross revenue for the card rooms on a combined basis and a cumulative basis. So both card rooms combined and cumulative January, February, on a monthly basis through the end of the year. Let me orient you to this. The blue bar is 2018, and then each of the lines represent the prior 3 years. So the red line's 2017, the green line's 2016, and I think that's a blue line at 2015. So you can see where we are right now in February. We're actually running ahead of where we were in 2015, but slightly behind where we were in 2016 and 2017. 2018, the card room's gross revenue for the first 2 months was $3.3 million. That's down roughly 20% from where it was in 2016 and 17 at roughly $4.1 million. But it's above 10% above the $3 million that they had in January and February of 2015. Our estimate, if the 850,000 average holds true for the year, will be 20.4 million. So you can see where that fits in terms of the last couple of years for these two card rooms. That's where we're thinking things are at the moment. This is, I think, may not be the perfect slide to try and do this, but what we want to do is track the revenue on a monthly basis going forward and bring that back to you, at least with the quarterly reports. Sales tax, I mentioned this is somewhat of a bright side. Again, similarly, we show you the first quarter sales tax revenue going back to 2012 in this slide through 2018, and then show you the budget. So the first quarter of 2018, just under $96,000 of revenue from the sales tax compared to $70,000 in the budget, so running well above the budgeted amounts, and you can see how that compares to the prior years. 2017, if you recall, that has the interchange sales tax revenue from the construction project in that. The first quarter of 2018 has a little bit, roughly about $13,000 of sales tax revenue from the utility, the sewer line construction in there as well. But even if you take that away, it's $82,000, significantly more than a normal year, 2016. So sales tax is up, and that's, again, I think primarily related to the development activity that you have going on, which is reflected somewhat in this slide. So this, again, is the same kind of slide that we had with the card room tax revenue. This is a cumulative residential, single-family residence new building permits for the city for the last 4 years. You can see January, February, March of 2018 in the blue bars. We've issued 8 new single-family residential permits so far this year. In 2017, we'd issued 4 at the same time, so we're double where we were last year. And in 2016, we'd actually issued 5. 2015, there were no permits issued until July. Just a quick update on this. I do some work with Washougal, so I track theirs. They've only issued 5 permits through the first quarter. Jeff's here, he said they've issued 75, so I don't want to get too boastful here. So Ridgefield's still going strong, in fact, stronger than last year. But for La Center, again, the new building permits and the new subdivisions, and I think the estimate for this year is 58 for the full year, which is higher than the 40 we had estimated in the budget. So we'll be tracking this as we go through the year as well, just to show you the seasonality of how this works, but also where we are year to date. Turning to the expense side, so this is the expenses by department. In your packets, there are expenses by object or purpose, the salaries, benefits, that type of thing. This is more by department. Again, we're looking for numbers that are in the 25% range. Little note down at the bottom here, the January first quarter is somewhat of an anomaly when we look at expenses, but because we pay some large one-time expenses in January. The example is the AWC, Association of Washington Cities Insurance, for $117,000. The Clark Regional Emergency Services Agency, that's the 911 agency, also gets their payment in the first quarter of the year. So those two payments were made, and they skew the numbers ahead for a number of areas above 25%. But overall, you can see we're about 26.7%. If you adjust for those items, you'd be roughly in that actually you'd be below 25% for the year. Running a little bit ahead of where we were last year. Last year, if you recall, there were a number of vacant positions that the city had. So the bulk of this is additional positions that are now filled, with the exception of 2 approved positions that we have vacant right now. One is a community development director, and the other is a police officer position as well, that both are planned to be filled later this year. So on a net basis, general fund net revenue, roughly a loss of $6,800 compared to a net revenue of $107,000 last year. Again, looking back to 2017, lots of additional revenue from the card rooms came in that year. And you can see where we are net. You total those two together, we're about $114,000 behind where we were last year. Okay? But again, final comment here is really too early to tell where we'll be at the end of the year because of the salary savings and some of the vacant positions. I don't anticipate any aggregate issues at this point. Nothing to bring to your attention. The sewer fund side, similarly, you can see revenues coming in at roughly 25% of the budget. Expenses at 33%. Again, this is largely due to the insurance payment that we made in the first quarter. In addition, there are some professional services expenses in this services and charges number for the systems development charge study that you'll be having a workshop on next month. Those are really the only 2 things to bring up of note. From a expense side, net revenue side, there is that transfer. So there's the $200,000 that was transferred to the general fund to begin that debt service payment. So that also skews the comparison year over year. If you take that out, again, we're right at that 25% number, at or below that. Again, nothing really to note. Systems development charges, got that revenue down here, reflects payment on 6 permits. So if you recall, some developers have the ability to defer payment of their system development charges. This represents payment on 6 homes, as did your park impact fees and your traffic impact fees. So just a couple of other things to note. Real estate excise taxes are down this year. I think you've probably been told over the last couple of years that revenue source has been increasing fairly steadily. So this is a year-over-year decline for the first quarter. We'll be looking at this. This is revenue that's restricted to capital, so you can only use it for capital purposes. You can't use it for operations. Vehicle equipment fund revenue, sale of a vehicle to the city of Battle Ground is included there. That wasn't expected in the budget. The sewer line fund, so this is a fund that's really guaranteed by the Cowlitz tribe. They'll be making payments on the debt. The construction is substantially complete at this point. There's a $5 million revenue bond that they'll be making the payments on until the bonds mature in 3 years. And that's reflected in this reserve balance. Let me just hit on this before we get to the rest of it. This $509,000, in addition to having the guarantee from the tribes, the bank required a deposit of $500,000 to be available in case the payments weren't made. So there's sort of a belts and suspenders here in terms of the guarantee that that payment will be made for the city. Just quickly, in the general and reserve funds, these are the two that we track the most. Ending reserve balances are just under $6.7 million, right at $6.7 million. Again, that relates back to a policy target of $4.6 million, so still continuing at that roughly $2 million ahead of the target that you have. So just to close, we'll have a second quarter financial update for you in July. The Budget Advisory Committee met last night, really good meeting. They'll be meeting monthly, approximately. We'll have a baseline budget for you late summer, and we'll begin some of the budget workshops late summer, early fall. The preliminary budget's due the first part of October, so in the third quarter update, we'll have the preliminary budget available roughly the first part of October. Any questions?
Did you get any red flags with the decrease in revenues from the card rooms? Is there any red flags that we should be?
No, I think for the most part, with the adjusted agreement, with the adjusted revenue, it's coming in right where we expected it to. So the effective tax rate year-to-date is 6.8%, and that's what we had expected it. So the revenue's coming in roughly at $850,000 gross revenue per month, and the taxes are running what we expect.
I would like you to thank the Budget Committee because it's their progressive work, because this is going to be a cautionary year. We're not going to be sure of our revenues, and I really like their approach, taking the caution, until we figure out where the ground lies. So I extend that to the Budget Committee, if you would, please.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Janice, you can take this over? This off, or do I need to close out of this?
Yeah. Right there.
There we go.
You're
Yeah,
good.
good job, Paul. Good
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, I apologize, Mr. Cairns, but I did pass over you this evening for city attorney comments. Do you have anything for the council this evening?
Well, you saw no one noticed. So everything is kind of, the process I described before on the land use appeals are churning forward so that both appeals end up at the Court of Appeals consolidated and on the same schedule, and it hasn't quite happened yet, but it will.
Okay.
So we're looking at our due date for our brief still, I think is July 31st.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cairns? Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a interlocal agreement for building official services with City of Richfield. Mr. Sarvis and Mr. Knighton will be presenting that this evening.
You've already been introduced, so no need to introduce you there.
Yeah.
Currently, City of La Center has an interlocal agreement with the City of Richfield for building inspection services. But, as you just heard Mr. Lewis report, Richfield's pretty darn busy. It's picking up activity in La Center. I'd like to, the city needs to assure that we continue to have building services, inspection services, plan review services at what I believe is a reasonable cost. But this interlocal agreement does that. It changes the way that we do business with the City of Richfield. We pay a flat monthly fee for a guaranteed amount of 54 hours. And then we pay the rate, and there's different rates for different types of personnel that come out here. Typically, we pay $65 an hour. I showed you some numbers. The numbers on the in the report are at $75 an hour. I tend to be conservative. And so, if we were to build 58 homes, for instance, this year, and have those inspected, assuming some efficiencies, because we have a bunch of homes being built and there's not too many locations around the community, they're all going to be pretty close together. There's probably some efficiencies. We would realize a cost of about, with mileage and expenses, about $63,000. We couldn't hire our own personnel, building inspector, official to do that. So, if we built 58 homes and we had building permits and plan check fees, we would be collecting about $219,000. $219,000 doesn't just go to pay building inspections. You have your permitting, you have your other overhead, you have personnel that support all of the building activity. So, but that's roughly what we'd be collecting. So the impact to the center budget right now is we do budget for this type of agreement. We would have to come back and ask for a budget amendment of sorts and amend our budget to include this type of process with Ridgefield, to include $4,000 a month and then whatever it was. So cost is going to increase, but again, Ridgefield's been providing outstanding service. It's much, we don't need the space, we don't have to find space, and we also don't have to pay a full-time person or persons, and then pay Ridgefield to back up when that person is sick or on vacation or whatever. And I'll let Jeff say a couple things. Jeff Knighton is the building department is under his purview in Ridgefield.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I appreciate you inviting me here to speak with you this evening. Mr. Soros and I did look at this agreement and decided that it was the best way to approach providing the best services for both Ridgefield and for the city of the center. Looking at our folks that are out here now inspecting the building and development activity that you have currently, and looking forward to what you expect. If you build 58 homes this year in the city, it's a pretty significant jump from what Mr. Lewis was showing us during the budget presentation. I think it is a great way to achieve efficiencies for both of our cities and provide excellent service for customers we share and we have independently. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
What would be the expected turnaround times? I mean, if we start getting, obviously it's going to pick up this year, it looks like. We don't control developers, but they control themselves. What's our turnaround time? I know when I was at Longview, they had a 2-week turnaround, so the plans came in to come. What's you guys' policy there?
So my target is a 2-week turnaround time for residential permits. We have been able to meet that in the city of Ridgefield without any issues, although building activity is picking up. We have a nice day today, a lot more people are going to be out there bringing up homes and things like that. So in order to maintain that level of service, we would need to add an additional employee in the building department. Approval of this agreement will allow us to do that. By both the Center Council and the Ridgefield City Council is considering the same agreement tomorrow evening. And when that's complete, we'll have a level of certainty and we'll be able to add an additional person to make sure we maintain that 2-week period.
Okay, that'll be critical. I know being an ex-fire chief, the builders get really upset when they don't get plans processed.
They do tend to get that.
And they bite us, not you.
Sure.
I have a comment.
Sure.
I would just like to say that Jeff was very helpful to me a couple of years ago when I was on the Planning Commission. He helped me on a couple of topics. One was when we were just beginning to go into the discussion on LED street lighting, and I took up quite a bit of his time on that meeting. And then he was also helpful when we began looking into the current sign code. So appreciate the help you gave me back then.
Absolutely, and I'm always willing to help if there's any questions.
Okay.
I'd just like to take this opportunity, Mr. Knight, to thank you and thank the city of Ridgefield. The city of La Center and the city of Ridgefield have an excellent working relationship. We've really assisted each other in many instances. We have a great relationship. La Center Police Department and the Ridgefield Police Department is just outstanding. With all the great help that you give us on the building inspections, it's much appreciated. Your inspectors are all top-notch individuals. We always look forward to them coming to La Center, even though one of them actually lives in La Center. And so, no, it's great that our two communities are so close and work so well together. And I even understand we were able to assist Ridgefield here a few weeks ago with the issue you had at your wastewater treatment plant. So I'm glad we were able to help. So again, thank you very much, and it's just great that our communities are so close.
And could you put an inspection on a citizen's concern about our community center, maybe on the list when we get this thing signed?
I can, we can certainly look at it.
Thank you.
We'll see you at the big battle.
Thank you.
With that, we're big here.
Yeah, so we need a motion, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion authorizing the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement for building inspection and plan review services between the cities of Ridgefield and La Center.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement for building inspections and plan review services between the city of Ridgefield and the city of Center. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you again, Mr. Knighton.
So, Mr. Mayor, will this be coming up for a budget adjustment then in the future?
It will be coming up for a budget probably at the end of the year. Mr. Lewis can answer that question.
Yes, we'll be tracking this along with a number of other things to the extent that we need a budget adjustment. You adopt your budget at the general fund level, so if the building inspection side goes a little bit over, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need a budget adjustment, but the significant amount of this may require us to do a budget adjustment prior to the end of the year. The good news is, I think if the development activity comes in as we expect, the revenues will also be higher to be able to cover the expenses.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, next on the agenda is we do have a bid award this evening, award for the 2018 LED streetlight conversion project bid. And Mr. Cooper will be presenting, our city engineer this evening will be presenting that.
See if I need to. Okay. So this is the bid award for the LED streetlight project. It's a relight called Relight Project according to TIB. Just to go into a little depth, the city secured grant funding to retrofit existing city-owned high-pressure sodium streetlights with lower cost, more efficient light emitting diode lights. There's two grants. One of the grants is from Washington State Transportation Improvement Board, and the other one is from, it's called the Relight Washington, and the other one is called the a grant for PUD, which is the Commercial Lighting Incentive Program, CLIP. They call it the CLIP program. And the grant funding amount is a total of $61,500. And we're going to explain further about the grant, but it's sufficient to fund all of the grant is sufficient to fund the project cost. So as you recall, some of the streetlights in the city are part of the local utility district managed through Clark PUD. And these lights are being retrofitted by PUD and are not part of the city streetlight conversion project. So PUD is upgrading those LEDs in some of the subdivision areas, but it's not part of this. There are an estimated 205 city-owned HPS streetlights to be converted to LED lights. Approximately 86 Acorn, 92 Cobra Head, 3 Post Top, and 24 Shepherd's Hook lights. The project was advertised. We advertised it in the Reflector and the Southwest Contractors Association site. And the bids were open on April 4th, 2018. DJC Electric from Battleground submitted the only bid, and the bid was $37,360. As part of the contract, the city will be supplying the contractor with the Cobra Head lights and the photo control cells. This is just part of the contract that Proceed purchases it. It's a little cheaper to do it that way, and those Cobra Heads and the photo cells cost $13,782. So the budget, which is 100% reimbursable from TIB and the CLIP program, TIB grant was $44,735, and the PUD incentive for the CLIP program is $16,675. So the project award is $61,500. DJC Electric bid was $37,360, and city supply cost with overheads is $13,782. So the total project cost is going to be $51,142. So are there any questions that you have about it?
To address the
Yes.
question from the floor, on the shielding.
Yes.
I did, could you discuss a little bit about the light flow and the spec sheets, because if it's a 5 or a 3, I'm sure that's meaningless to all of us, but it means something to you, and could you give us some background on that, please?
First of all, the first, I think one of the questions is gosh, why did we use a type 5 directive of light versus a type 3 or a type 4 or a type 2? Well, folks that went way ahead of us, including Richfield, including Battle Ground, including Washougal, including Kansas, have used this type 5 pattern replacement bulb. And so that's what our specifications say. The difference really basic between a type 3 and a type 5 is the pattern of light and where it is distributed. Frankly, I think that a type 5 is probably a tighter pattern than a type 3. I don't know that they make the replacement bulb in a type 3, but I will look into it. I don't have a problem looking into it. And actually, I'm thinking about trying out a couple before we actually tell the contractor to move forward. The other thing is, it is as close as you can get on the replacement is a dark sky friendly, because it does have lumens or light is directed down. And so it's probably a little bit better than what we have out there today with the HPS lights. It's a 36 watt light replaces a 150 watt light bulb kind of thing. And so I don't recommend, I did hear Councilmember Bob say, well, maybe we ought to postpone. I don't recommend we postpone. The CLIP program is conditioned that we have our project done and built by August. So it's kind of comparative. The Cobras will be, the arm and the head will be replaced. Like Tony said, the city will supply those to the contractor, but there's a lead time on those. So.
Could you visit a little bit on the shielding, because there is a shielding capability on these lights?
Not on not on this particular replacement bulb. I don't think there's a shielding. Now on the ones that we talked about, and we met with and talked about the Halophane brand, there is a shielding.
So it doesn't apply in this
And they will
case?
be on that light themselves. We're actually talking about shields for cul-de-sacs and that sort of thing for the Cobra heads, if we had Cobra heads or things like that. But the shielding in this replacement bulb is probably, I don't think it's.
Are the bulbs contractor furnished, or are we supplying them?
Contractor furnished. We're all using the same contractor too. Yeah. So they have the supplier has told us that they will honor the same price for us as they did for the other supplier, for the other communities as well.
So would there be impact if we changed from the type 5 to the type 3?
I don't think so. You know, if it's available, it wouldn't be a big enough impact to matter.
Okay.
I don't think.
We can try them out.
Yeah, I would like to. I'd also like to see if they have a little bit of temperature. You know, we were talking about how these lights are so light and beautiful. I was going to read an expert out of the catalog here, but I don't think it will. Dark sky friendly outdoor street lighting applications is directed towards the ground by curved glare shields. So glare shields are on the light bulbs.
If you do try them out, I wouldn't mind volunteering to come out and take a look at it. I don't know if any other council.
No, I definitely
Well, that's-
would.
yeah.
I'd like to take a look and see kind of what the patterns are and kind of get an
What
idea.
What
fixtures
would you be changing?
Actually, you know, the lights that were installed in your neighborhood, I think, are adjustable.
Good.
I've been looking at, I'm learning it only at
The first,
Web Rock,
but aren't they the same ones that went,
Huh?
aren't they the same type that were installed?
That's why I'm looking into that.
Yeah.
I think they're adjustable, but I'm still looking into it. So if they are, that would be great. Those do have shields.
Do you think we have time to look at the 3 and the 5 and shielding without delaying the project,
Yeah.
meeting the deadline? Okay.
I need to get the bolts here, get the contractor to put it in and replace them.
Good.
You guys just gonna have to stay up late.
Okay.
Is that a state bid on the lights, on the bulbs, or?
No, it is.
It's not a state bid?
This one is not the state bid, but it's the same bid price that.
Oh, the longer that price? Okay.
Battleground Washington Ridge.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty substantial.
One last question. I'm not up to date with the most recent CPU rate chart for the LEDs. Do you know offhand what the projected savings is to the city once we do the complete retrofit?
I thought that I recalled, and I was looking for that kind of hastily, that I thought that I recalled that it was about $5,000 a year, so almost, and we paid, our lighting, the city's lighting bill for street lights is about $15,000 a year, so about a third.
About a third,
Maybe a
okay.
little more, is the expected, and sometimes, we'll just have to see if we achieve that.
Okay, thank you.
But the life of the bulb itself is about 20 years.
You said it was 150 watts down to 36, is that what you said?
Mhm.
That's pretty big.
Yes, significant. Yeah.
And the longer lifespan is
Oh, longer lifespan.
Huge.
And then like
Less
Councilmember
maintenance.
Venezuela said, as we look into this more, you know, we do want to kind of try to stay within the realm of spare parts and that sort of thing, but definitely there's some improvement to be made, and the Planning Commission is on their way to dark skies, so.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I need a motion.
I make a motion authorizing the Public Works Director to move forward with the LED streetlight conversion project and award the bid in the amount of $37,360 to DJC Electric.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize the Public Works Director to move forward with the LED street light conversion project and award the bid in the amount of $37,360 to DJC Electric. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda, in accordance with RCW 42-30-110G, the City Council will be going into an executive session. The executive session will last for about 30 minutes, and no action will be taken. So with that being said, if I could ask everybody to please leave the chambers except for the council. Thank you for being here, everyone, this
Thanks,
evening,
everyone.
folks.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Good night, sir. I want to be gone this winter. I want to spend the winter time gone.
I'm just making sure.
We usually have great balls here.
I hope I contributed a little bit. Do what?
That's the bigger frightening part of it is food.
Yeah, I know. And then when I came on and got informed, it was a different story than what I. So when I came on and started getting informed, it was a different story than what I had been. What was going on in the city.
Where were you going?
Things.
Yeah, I took it to complete.
Well, most of the financial impact, the decisions that were being made. That's why I jumped ship, so to speak. Good former administration. Bugged after year, and I finally, when I found what I thought was going on as far as how the city would be run.
So you went to
It's not the way it should be being done, so.
we went to the mall.
And since then, he has talked to me.
Then you got to, is it
Campbell.
Yeah, and road to train. And she's.
You live up there?
Yeah. Training for business trips.
You know, there's a large indoor
Something
Way out
from the
down by,
Was there something removed from the agenda? I'm still not showing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Totally messed with everybody calling.
Oh, I was gonna say, I updated right before I got
Club
here.
members on our railroad work down there too.
That was a great.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah, pretty great.
Okay, I just got a text that it's still being recorded.
No,
so
no,
we're-
I did about 250 rail miles last week.
See, I'm presenting next week, actually,
I
at
did
the
the
EWC
complete
conference on Thursday on
set.
public
To
employment.
show the page.
So it'd be
So
recording?
I'll keep an eye out for you.
Okay.
GoPro running every 10 seconds. And we got one of the crop dusters coming down over the tracks, looking at us.
Oh, at LRI?
Rocking back and forth,
Because I'm there
trying
too.
to-
I
Which
have, my business partner and I have presented there for 19 years.
Okay, great.
So we're doing a session on development of a leadership team.
Okay.
And then we're doing a session, and everybody else is too, on changing the trajectory of discrimination. And we're doing a mentoring, preparing the mentor.
Okay.
So not just,
So which day are you presenting?
we're doing Thursday and Friday.
Okay, so I'll be there Thursday.
Yeah, we have a Thursday morning session and then a Friday session as well.
Okay.
But we've done that for 18 or 19 years. We did that before we were in the ordinary firm.
Oh, wow, great.
Yeah.
Hey, Mia.
My law partner, Stephen, is about to be up there.
Okay, he had, I'm waiting on, he had me.
Probably Wednesday, our pre-conference.
Something collective bargaining.
And so I logged myself.
Where were you be? You said you'd be.
At the AWC conference next week?
At LRI.
LRI, yes.
No, I'm not going to be there.
Oh, you're not going to be there?
Next week, no.
Okay, so it's in here.
Yeah. I'm going in, is it June?
Yakima this summer.
Yakima.
Yakima this summer.
No, I mean to
That's
get
the one.
into
Well, the one next week is in Yakima.
It is in Yakima.
It's also in Yakima? Yeah, this is the big one in June.
Yeah, this is the.
Yeah.
AWC has a long-standing
On
contract
my login?
all the way through 2020 with the convention center to do conferences. So, and it also is ideal for both sides of the state. So that they have a long-standing contract. Because we've asked for LRI to be moved, and they're like, no, not gonna happen. So,
What is LRI? I'm not familiar with that.
It's the Labor Relations Institute.
Oh, okay.
so the topic is
That was mentioned
labor
last night.
relations and human resources management.
Okay.
Okay.
So, as soon as I write the presentation.
They didn't ask you for materials already?
Yeah, well, they sent me an email today that reminded us, but yeah. I got one.
It's under me.
somewhere.
You got a boilerplate, I know you.
Well, I kind of do, but I want to tighten it up a little.
Not me.
The mentoring piece, though, is totally different because it includes the unconscious bias and testing that in your mentor, and training the mentor, and not letting mentors volunteer, but screening the mentor. And then giving them conditions and job descriptions and all of that. So it's a little more involved than your standard mentor. With the idea that the way we change discrimination is to change how our leadership is developed and how that's, so.
Yeah, it's been a big push with the EEOC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Called what? Oh, got it.
So we're
got
giving
it,
it a
got
try.
There's never been any bias against women in the workplace, has there?
Never been any bias against anybody, you know? Especially if you're Mexican.
Yeah.
And then just go
I'm just glad I'm not a Muslim today.
Yeah, no kidding.
complete.
A lot of my neighbors are, so it's kind of interesting.